The smell of garlic and fresh basil filled the air as Lisa wiped down another table. Her feet ached in those black non-slip shoes she'd worn for the past 3 years at Romano's Italian restaurant. It was Tuesday night, which meant the dinner rush had been manageable. Not too crazy, not too slow. Just enough to keep her moving, but not enough to make decent tips. She glanced at the clock on the wall. 9:30. Another hour and she could finally go home, kick off these shoes and maybe watch something mindless on TV before collapsing into bed. Then wake up tomorrow and do it all over again. This wasn't the life she'd imagined for herself. But then again, life rarely turns out the way we imagine it, does it? Lisa grabbed the coffee pot and made her rounds, refilling cups for the few remaining customers. There was old Mrs. Patterson in booth 3, picking at her tiramisu like she always did. The young couple by the window, so wrapped up in each other they barely noticed their food getting cold, and Mr. Williams in the corner reading his newspaper with a half-empty glass of red wine. "More coffee, Mrs. Patterson?" Lisa asked with a smile she'd perfected over countless shifts. "Oh yes, dear. You're such a sweetheart." Mrs. Patterson patted her hand gently. Lisa poured the coffee and moved on. This was her routine. This was her life now. Take orders, serve food, smile, repeat. The other servers knew her as reliable Lisa, the girl who never called in sick, the one who'd cover your shift if you asked nicely, the one who remembered that table 7 always wanted extra Parmesan, and table 12 needed their salad dressing on the side. But what they didn't know, what nobody at Romano's knew, was that Lisa had once been someone completely different. As she walked past the corner dining room, her eyes landed on it. The old upright piano. It sat there against the wall like a piece of furniture that nobody quite knew what to do with. The owner, Tony, had bought it at an estate sale years ago, thinking it would add some class to the place. Some authentic Italian restaurant charm, but nobody ever played it. It just sat there collecting dust with a vase of fake flowers on top, and a few framed photos of the Italian countryside leaning against the music stand. Lisa looked at it every single shift, every single day, and every single time something twisted in her chest. That piano knew secrets about her that even her co-workers didn't know. 5 years ago, Lisa had been a completely different person. She'd been a student at the Morrison Conservatory of Music, one of the most prestigious music schools in the state. She'd practiced 8 hours a day. Her fingers had flown across the keys of a beautiful grand piano, playing Chopin and Beethoven and Rachmaninoff. Her professors had called her gifted, promising. They'd talked about concert halls and recordings and a future that sparkled with possibility. She'd lived and breathed music. It had been everything to her. But then her father got sick. Cancer. The aggressive kind that spreads fast and doesn't care about your dreams or your future or your promising career. Her mother worked 2 jobs, but it wasn't enough. Not with the medical bills piling up. Not with the treatments that insurance wouldn't cover. Not with the experimental drugs that just might give him a few more years. Lisa had made a choice. She'd left the conservatory, dropped out halfway through her 3rd year. She'd found the job at Romano's because it offered flexible hours and immediate pay. No waiting 2 weeks for a paycheck. She'd worked doubles, triples when she could manage it. She'd sent every penny home. Her father had lived another 18 months. 18 months that she'd never regret giving him, even if it cost her everything else. But after he passed, she found she couldn't go back. The conservatory spot was gone, given to someone else. Her scholarship had evaporated, and even if she could somehow scrape together the tuition, she'd been away too long. Her fingers had grown stiff. Her repertoire had faded. The girl who could play Rachmaninoff's most difficult pieces had become the woman who could barely remember the notes. So she'd stayed at Romano's, kept serving pasta and pouring wine, kept smiling and taking orders, kept pretending that the piano in the corner was just another piece of furniture. "Lisa, table 5 needs their check," Tony called from behind the bar. She snapped back to reality. On it, this was her life now. And most days she was okay with it. Most days she didn't think about what might have been. Most days she didn't let herself remember the feeling of music flowing through her fingers. The way a perfectly played phrase could make her heart soar. The applause after a recital that made all the practice worth it. Most days. But some days, like today, when she walked past that dusty piano with its fake flowers and forgotten keys, she remembered everything. And it hurt in a way that never quite went away. Lisa, you okay? Her coworker Jenny appeared at her elbow with a stack of dirty plates. Yeah, fine. Show's tired, aren't we all? Jenny laughed. Only 45 more minutes. We've got this. Lisa nodded and grabbed table 5's check. The young couple was leaving, still holding hands. Mrs. Patterson was finally finishing her tiramisu. Mr. Williams had moved on to the sports section of his newspaper. Just another Tuesday night at Romano's. Just another shift in a life that had become a series of shifts. Wake up, go to work, come home, sleep, repeat. It was stable. It was safe. It paid the bills. And if sometimes she dreamed about concert halls and standing ovations, well, that's all they were. Dreams. The kind you have when you're young and don't yet understand how quickly life can change direction. How one decision, one twist of fate, can take you down a completely different path than the one you'd planned. Lisa refilled the water glasses at table 2, cleared the plates from table 8, and brought Mr. Williams his check. She moved through her routine with practiced efficiency, her mind half present, half somewhere else. She carefully avoided looking at the piano as she passed through the corner dining room one more time. Some things were better left alone. Some doors once closed were better left that way. Her fingers absently tapped against the serving tray she carried. A rhythm, a pattern. The opening notes of a piece she'd once played perfectly, now just a ghost of a memory in her fingertips. She didn't know it yet, but everything was about to change. Sometimes life gives you a second chance when you least expect it. Sometimes the universe conspires to remind you of who you used to be, who you could still become. Sometimes a simple Tuesday night at an Italian restaurant becomes the night that changes everything. But for now, Lisa just wiped down another table and counted down the minutes until her shift ended, unaware that tomorrow would bring a request that would crack open the door she'd worked so hard to keep closed. Wednesday evening started like any other. Lisa tied her apron, checked her order pad, and mentally prepared herself for another shift. The dinner crowd was lighter than usual, just a handful of tables scattered throughout the restaurant. She noticed him right away when he walked in. An older gentleman, maybe in his 70s, with kind eyes and a gentle smile. He wore a cardigan sweater despite the mild weather, and carried himself with a certain dignity that made you want to sit up straighter. "Good evening," Lisa greeted him. "Just one tonight?" "Yes, please." "The corner table, if it's available?" She led him to table 12, right next to the piano. He'd been coming in every few weeks for the past couple of months, always alone, always ordering the same thing, minestrone soup and the mushroom ravioli, always polite, always left a decent tip. "Can I start you off with something to drink, Mr. Chen?" "Just water, thank you. And please call me Henry." Lisa smiled and headed to the kitchen. She liked Henry. He had this calm presence about him. Never rushed her. Never complained. Never talked on his phone during dinner. He just sat quietly, ate his meal, and seemed to genuinely enjoy the simple act of being there. As the evening went on, Lisa found herself glancing over at his table more than usual. He wasn't eating much tonight, just pushing his ravioli around the plate, lost in thought. Every now and then his eyes would drift to the piano beside him. She'd caught him looking at it before. Sometimes he'd reach out and touch the wood gently, like you might touch an old friend's shoulder. It made her curious, but she never asked. Everyone had their stories, their reasons for the things they did. "How's everything tasting tonight?" she asked when she came to refill his water. "Wonderful as always." He set down his fork and looked at her directly. "Lisa, may I ask you something?" Of course, he hesitated, choosing his words carefully. "That piano, does anyone ever play it?" Her chest tightened. "No, not really. It's just kind of there for decoration." "That's a shame." He ran his finger along the edge of the table. "A piano should be played. Otherwise, it's just a very expensive piece of furniture." Lisa forced a laugh. "I suppose you're right. Do you play?" The question hung in the air between them. She could have said no, could have brushed it off and moved on to the next table, but something about the way he asked, the genuine curiosity in his voice, made her pause. "I used to," she admitted quietly. "A long time ago." Henry's face lit up. "I thought so." "What do you mean?" "The way you look at it sometimes. When you walk past. I recognize that look." He smiled softly. "I taught music for 40 years. You develop an eye for these things." Lisa felt exposed suddenly, like he'd seen through a disguise she'd been wearing for years. That was a different life. "I don't really play anymore." Henry nodded slowly. That's unfortunate. Music has a way of staying with us even when we try to leave it behind. Before she could respond, Tony called her name from the kitchen. She excused herself, grateful for the interruption. Her hands were shaking slightly as she picked up the order for table 6. Why had she told him that? She never talked about the piano. Never talked about her past. It was easier to keep those worlds separate. The rest of the shift passed in a blur. Henry finished his dinner, nursed a cup of coffee, and read a book he'd brought with him. The restaurant slowly emptied until it was just him and one other couple finishing their dessert. Lisa was clearing table 9 when Henry stood up and approached her. "Lisa, I hope you don't think I'm being presumptuous," he said, his voice gentle. "But would you consider playing something? Just one piece." For an old man who misses hearing live music, her heart jumped into her throat. "Oh, I couldn't. I'm working and I haven't played in years, and I've already spoken with Tony," Henry interrupted. "He said it would be fine. The restaurant's nearly empty anyway." She looked over at Tony behind the bar. He shrugged and grinned. "Go ahead, Lisa, I didn't even know you played. This I gotta see. It's really not, I'm not—" She was stumbling over her words, panic rising in her chest. "Please," Henry said simply. "Just one song. Anything at all." Jenny appeared beside her, practically bouncing with excitement. "Oh my gosh, Lisa, yes, do it. I've worked here for 2 years and nobody's ever touched that thing." Suddenly, everyone was looking at her. The couple at table 4 had stopped eating their tiramisu. The busboy had paused with a tub of dirty dishes. Even the line cook had poked his head out of the kitchen to see what was happening. There was no graceful way out of this. "Okay," Lisa heard herself say, "but just something simple. And don't expect too much." Her legs felt shaky as she walked to the piano. She pulled out the bench, the legs scraping against the floor with a sound that seemed too loud. She sat down and stared at the keys. They were dusty. Some were slightly yellowed with age. When was the last time this thing had even been tuned? Her hands hovered over the keyboard. She could feel everyone watching her, waiting. "Take your time," Henry said softly from his table. Lisa closed her eyes and took a deep breath. Then she placed her fingers on the keys and started to play. Something simple, like she'd promised. Fur-Elise, the piece every piano student learns. The piece that tourists play on public pianos in train stations. Her fingers were stiff at first, uncertain. She hit a wrong note and winced. But then muscle memory began to kick in. Her fingers remembered where to go even if her mind had tried to forget. The simple melody filled the small restaurant. It wasn't perfect, far from it, but it was music. Real music, coming from her fingers after years of silence, and something strange happened. As she played, something inside her began to unlock. A door she'd kept sealed tight began to crack open. Her fingers gained confidence. The notes came easier. The melody grew stronger. Without consciously deciding to, she transitioned into something else. Something harder. The opening measures of Chopin's Nocturne in E-flat major, a piece she'd played 100 times in her conservatory days, a piece she'd loved. Her hands moved across the keys with increasing sureness. The years fell away. She wasn't a waitress anymore. She was a musician again. The restaurant faded. The watching eyes disappeared. There was only the music and her and the piano that had been waiting all this time. The notes poured out of her, carrying with them all the emotion she'd been holding back. The grief, the regret, the longing for something she'd lost. Every feeling she'd buried under busy shifts and aching feet and forced smiles found its way into the music. She could feel it happening. The transformation. The awakening. Like she'd been sleepwalking for 3 years and suddenly, finally, she was waking up. The piece built to its crescendo, and Lisa's fingers flew across the keys with a speed and precision that surprised even her. How did she still remember this? How were her hands still capable of this after so long? And then, before she was ready, it was over. The final chord hung in the air. Lisa opened her eyes and looked down at her hands on the keys. They were trembling. Her heart was pounding. She felt like she'd just run a marathon. For a moment, there was complete silence. Then the restaurant erupted in applause. Lisa sat frozen on the piano bench, her hands still resting on the keys. The applause echoed around her, but it felt distant, like she was hearing it from underwater. Her heart was racing so fast she thought it might burst right out of her chest. What had she just done? "Lisa!" Jenny rushed over, her eyes wide with amazement. "Oh my God. That was incredible. I had no idea you could play like that. Tony had come out from behind the bar, wiping his hands on a towel, his mouth hanging open. Lisa, seriously? You've been working here for 3 years and you never mentioned you could do that? The couple from table 4 was standing now, still clapping. The busboy had set down his tub and was grinning from ear to ear. Even the line cook was applauding from the kitchen doorway. Lisa stood up quickly, her face burning hot. It wasn't that good, really. The piano's out of tune and I messed up a few notes and— Stop it! Henry's voice cut through her protests. He'd stood up from his table and was looking at her with an expression she couldn't quite read. Pride, recognition, something deeper. That was beautiful. And you know it was. She opened her mouth to argue, but the words wouldn't come. Because he was right. Somewhere in the middle of that piece, something had happened. Something real. For those few minutes, she'd felt alive in a way she hadn't felt in years. Where did you study? Henry asked, walking closer. Lisa hesitated. She never talked about this, never. Morrison Conservatory. But I didn't finish. Morrison? Henry's eyebrows shot up. That's one of the best music schools in the country. You don't get into Morrison unless you're seriously talented. I left in my 3rd year. The words came out flat. Final. She didn't want to explain why. Didn't want to see the pity in their eyes when they heard about her father, the medical bills, the impossible choices. But you can still play like that, Henry said softly, after all this time away. Do you understand how rare that is? Tony was shaking his head in disbelief. I can't believe you've been hiding this from us. Lisa, we could have live music here every weekend. Do you know how many restaurants would kill for that? I don't play anymore, Lisa said quickly. Tonight was just— It was a one-time thing. A favor. But why not? Jenny asked. If I could play like that, I'd never stop. Because it hurts too much. Because every note reminds me of everything I lost. Because it's easier to pretend that part of me doesn't exist anymore. But she didn't say any of that. Instead, she just shrugged. It's complicated. The couple from table 4 approached her on their way out. That was stunning, the woman said. Truly, my grandmother used to play Chopin. You brought back such wonderful memories. Thank you, Lisa managed, her voice barely a whisper. After they left, the restaurant felt too quiet, too focused on her. She needed to get back to work, back to normal. Back to being just Lisa, the waitress who took orders and served food and didn't cause a scene. I should finish cleaning up, she said. Moving toward table 9. Wait, Henry held up a hand. I need to tell you something. I wasn't entirely honest with you earlier. Lisa paused, confused. What do you mean? Henry walked back to his table and picked up his book. Except it wasn't a book. It was a leather portfolio. He opened it and pulled out a business card, handing it to her. She read it slowly. Henry Chen, Professor Emeritus, Morrison Conservatory of Music. Her stomach dropped. You teach at Morrison? Taught, he corrected. I retired 5 years ago. But I still have connections there. I know people. Lisa's hand started shaking again. I don't understand. Why are you here? I've been watching you for weeks, Henry admitted. The way you look at that piano. I've seen that expression before. It's the look of someone trying very hard to ignore a part of themselves. I had a feeling about you. So this was all, what, a setup? She felt betrayed somehow, even though she wasn't sure why. No. Henry shook his head quickly. I just wanted to hear you play, to confirm what I suspected. And now that I have— He paused, choosing his words carefully. Lisa, you're exceptionally gifted. That kind of talent doesn't just disappear because you take a few years off. It's been 3 years, almost 4, her voice cracked. I can't just pick up where I left off. Why not? Because— She struggled to find the words. Because I made my choice, I left. That door is closed. Doors can reopen, Henry said gently. If we want them to. Tony had been listening to the whole exchange. Lisa, I had no idea about any of this. But if you want to play here, really play, we could make it work. Friday and Saturday nights. You could perform for the dinner crowd. I'd pay you, obviously. More than server wages. I can't, Lisa said automatically. I'm not good enough anymore. You heard me. I made mistakes. We all heard you, Jenny said. And it was amazing. Girl, you need to stop being so hard on yourself. Lisa looked around at all their faces. Tony, excited about the possibility of live music in his restaurant. Jenny, supportive and encouraging like always. Henry, with his knowing eyes and his Morrison business card. And suddenly she felt angry. angry that they were making this seem so simple, so easy. Just play the piano, Lisa. Just pick up your old dreams like they're a sweater you left in a closet. Just pretend the last 3 years of grief and guilt and grinding through endless shifts meant nothing. You don't understand, she said, her voice rising. This isn't just about playing piano. When I left Morrison, I didn't just leave school. I left behind everything I wanted to be. Everything I worked for since I was 6 years old. And I can't just go back. The room went quiet. She could hear the hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen, the distant sound of traffic outside. I'm sorry, Henry said after a moment. You're right. I don't fully understand your situation, but I do understand talent, and I understand regret. I've seen too many gifted students walk away from music, and I've seen what happens to them. Some of them find new passions, new purposes. They're happy. But others... He trailed off. Others spend the rest of their lives wondering what if. Lisa felt tears prickling at the corners of her eyes. She refused to let them fall. Not here, not in front of everyone. I just need to think, she said finally. Of course. Henry tucked his portfolio under his arm. But before I go, let me tell you one more thing. There's a community concert series at the Arts Center downtown. Small, intimate performances. Nothing too formal. They're always looking for musicians. I know the director. I could make a call. Henry, just think about it, he interrupted. No pressure. But your gift shouldn't be hidden away, collecting dust like this piano. You deserve better than that. Music deserves better than that. He paid his bill, left a generous tip like always, and headed for the door. At the threshold, he turned back one more time. That Chopin piece, he said. You played it with real feeling, real emotion. That's not something you can teach. Either you have it or you don't. And Lisa, you have it. Then he was gone. Lisa stood in the empty restaurant, still wearing her apron, her order pad in her pocket, her comfortable server life suddenly feeling too small, too tight, like a coat she'd outgrown but kept wearing anyway because it was familiar. Jenny touched her arm gently. You okay? Lisa looked at the piano, at the keys she'd just played, at her reflection in the polished wood. I honestly don't know, she whispered, but something had shifted inside her. Something had cracked open, and she wasn't sure if she could close it again, even if she wanted to. Lisa couldn't sleep that night. She lay in her small apartment staring at the ceiling, her fingers unconsciously tapping out rhythms on her blanket. Every time she closed her eyes, she saw the piano keys, heard the music, felt that rush of feeling alive again. At 2 a.m, she gave up on sleep and made herself tea. Her phone sat on the kitchen counter, screen dark. She'd been avoiding it all evening, avoiding the temptation to look up the arts center Henry had mentioned, avoiding thoughts about what might be possible, but at 2:15 she picked it up anyway. The Riverside Arts Center had a simple website. Their community concert series featured local musicians every month. Piano, violin, guitar, even a jazz quartet. The performances were free to the public, held in an intimate space that seated maybe 100 people. Nothing fancy. Nothing terrifying, just music. Lisa closed the browser quickly, her heart pounding. What was she even thinking? She couldn't perform in front of people. She was a waitress. That's who she was now, except that wasn't quite true anymore, was it? Because everyone at Romano's knew now. The secret she'd kept for 3 years had spilled out in 10 minutes of playing Chopin. Thursday morning came too soon. Lisa dragged herself to the restaurant for her lunch shift, exhausted and anxious. She hoped maybe everyone would just forget about it, move on, let things go back to normal. That hope died the moment she walked through the door. There she is, our very own concert pianist, Tony announced from behind the bar, grinning like he'd won the lottery. Lisa felt her face go red. Tony, please, I've been thinking about this all night, he continued, ignoring her protest. We could do dinner and a show, Friday and Saturday nights. You play for an hour, maybe hour and a half. I'll advertise it. Live classical music at Romano's. It'll bring in a whole new crowd. I told you I can't. At least think about it, Tony pressed. I'll pay you double what you make serving. Triple on weekends, triple. Lisa's mind automatically calculated what that would mean. She could finally fix her car instead of taking the bus. Maybe save a little money. But the thought of playing in front of people every weekend made her stomach twist. I need time, she said finally. This is all happening too fast. Tony nodded, though she could see he was disappointed. Okay, fair enough. But the offer stands. The lunch shift was awkward. Everyone kept looking at her differently. Like she was a stranger they were meeting for the first time. Jenny kept trying to talk about it, asking questions about her training, her favorite composers, why she'd quit. Lisa deflected as much as she could, but the walls she'd built were crumbling. During her break, she sat in the back alley behind the restaurant, trying to clear her head. That's where Jenny found her. Hey. Jenny sat down on the milk crate next to her. You doing okay? You seem kind of stressed. I'm fine. Liar. Jenny smiled gently. Look, I know I don't know the whole story, but I saw your face last night when you were playing. You looked, I don't know, happy, really happy. I haven't seen you look like that in the 3 years we've worked together. Lisa didn't know what to say to that. Can I tell you something? Jenny continued. I'm in school right now, community college, studying to be a dental hygienist. And I hate it, like really hate it. But it's practical, you know? Good money, steady job. My mom's proud of me. So why are you telling me this? Because every single day I wish I'd studied art instead, Jenny said quietly. I love drawing. I'm actually pretty good at it, but I was too scared to try. Too scared of failing, of not making money, of people thinking I was being stupid and impractical. So I chose the safe thing, and now I'm stuck. She looked at Lisa directly. Don't be like me. Don't let fear make all your decisions. You have this incredible gift and you're hiding it because... Why? Because you're scared? Because it's easier? Because it hurts too much to care about something again? Lisa felt like she'd been punched in the chest. It's not that simple. I know, Jenny said. Life's never simple. But you got a second chance last night. How many people get that? How many people get discovered by a professor from their old school while serving ravioli? That's like movie stuff, universe stuff. Maybe you should pay attention to it. After Jenny went back inside, Lisa sat alone with her thoughts. Her phone buzzed. A text from an unknown number. Hello, Lisa, this is Henry Chen. Tony gave me your number. I hope that's all right. The Arts Center director would love to meet you. Her name is Patricia. No pressure, just coffee and conversation. Let me know if you're interested. Lisa stared at the message for a long time. She could ignore it. Block the number. Pretend none of this ever happened. Go back to being invisible, or her fingers hovered over the keyboard. She typed and deleted 3 different responses before finally settling on one. Okay. When? The reply came almost immediately. Tomorrow? 10 a.m.? There's a cafe next to the Art Center. I'll send you the address. Lisa's hands were shaking as she put her phone away. What was she doing? This was crazy. She wasn't ready for this. She wasn't good enough anymore, but she'd said yes, and somehow that felt both terrifying and right. That night, after her shift ended, Lisa did something she hadn't done in 3 years. She went online and found piano practice videos, scales, arpeggios, the technical exercises she used to do every morning before breakfast. She didn't have a piano at home, couldn't afford one, and didn't have space anyway. But she practiced on her kitchen table, her fingers pressing imaginary keys, muscle memory slowly waking up. She looked ridiculous, she knew, but she couldn't stop. Friday morning arrived cold and gray. Lisa changed her outfit 4 times before settling on jeans and a simple sweater. Nothing too fancy. This wasn't an audition. Just coffee, just conversation. The cafe was small and warm, filled with the smell of fresh bread and espresso. Henry was already there, sitting at a corner table with a woman who looked to be in her 50s. She had short silver hair and bright, intelligent eyes. Lisa! Henry stood up when he saw her. Thank you for coming. This is Patricia Reeves. She runs the community concert series. Patricia extended her hand with a warm smile. It's wonderful to meet you. Henry hasn't stopped talking about your playing. He says you're something special. He's being generous, Lisa said, sitting down. Her leg was bouncing nervously under the table. I doubt that, Patricia said. Henry was one of the toughest professors at Morrison. He doesn't give compliments lightly. They ordered coffee, made small talk. Patricia told her about the concert series, how it started 10 years ago as a way to give local musicians a platform, how they'd featured everyone from teenagers just starting out to retired professionals who still love to perform. We're not looking for perfection, Patricia explained. We're looking for passion, for musicians who have something to say. Henry tells me you have that. I don't know if I do anymore. Lisa admitted. It's been a long time. Why did you stop? Patricia asked gently. And somehow, sitting in that warm cafe with these two kind strangers, Lisa found herself telling the truth. About her father. About leaving Morrison. About the years of just surviving. Of putting one foot in front of the other. Of trying not to think about everything she'd lost. But you played again, Patricia said when Lisa finished. After all that, you sat down at that piano and you played. That takes courage. It didn't feel like courage. It felt like, I don't know, like I didn't have a choice. Maybe you didn't, Henry said. Maybe some things are too much a part of us to stay buried forever. Patricia leaned forward. Lisa, I'd love to have you perform in our series. We have an opening in 6 weeks. That's enough time to prepare a small program. 20-30 minutes of music. Whatever you want to play, whatever speaks to you, 6 weeks. Lisa's mind raced. Could she do it? Could she really stand on a stage again after all this time? What if I'm terrible? She whispered. Then you'll be terrible in front of 100 friendly people who are rooting for you, Patricia said with a smile. But Henry and I don't think you'll be terrible. We think you'll be remarkable. Lisa looked at Henry. He nodded encouragingly. She looked at Patricia, who was waiting patiently, no pressure in her expression. And then Lisa thought about Jenny, stuck studying something she hated because it was safe. About her father, who'd have wanted her to grab this chance with both hands. About the feeling of playing that Chopin piece, of coming alive again after years of sleepwalking. Okay, she heard herself say. I'll do it. Patricia's face lit up. Really? That's wonderful. But I don't have a piano to practice on, Lisa added quickly, reality crashing back in. The Art Center has practice rooms, Patricia said. You can use them anytime. I'll get you a key. Henry reached across the table and squeezed her hand briefly. I'm proud of you. This is the right choice. As Lisa walked out of the cafe an hour later, a key to the Art Center practice room in her pocket, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Hope. The next 6 weeks passed in a blur of coffee-stained sheet music and aching fingers. Lisa's life split into two worlds. By day she served pasta and smiled at customers. By night she disappeared into the practice room at the Art Center, fighting to remember pieces she'd once played perfectly. It was harder than she'd expected, so much harder. Her fingers stumbled over passages that used to be effortless. Her timing was off. Her touch too heavy in some places, too light in others. The first week she left the practice room in tears more than once, convinced she'd made a terrible mistake. But she kept going back. Tony had been true to his word, adjusting her schedule at Romano's so she could practice in the afternoons. Jenny covered some of her shifts without complaint. Even the line cook, a grumpy guy named Pete who rarely talked to anyone, started leaving her encouraging notes with her staff meals. Sounding good in there, one read. The practice room walls were thinner than she'd realized. Henry stopped by sometimes to listen. He never criticized, never told her what to do. Just sat in the corner, eyes closed, letting the music wash over him. Afterward, he'd offer gentle suggestions. Try that phrase again, but softer this time. Like you're telling a secret. It helped more than she could say. By week 3, her fingers started to remember. Muscle memory is a strange thing. It hides in your body, waiting. All those hours she'd spent as a teenager practicing scales and arpeggios hadn't disappeared. They'd just been sleeping. By week 4, she'd chosen her program. The Chopin Nocturne she'd played at Romano's, a Bach prelude that had always felt like coming home, and Debussy's Clair de Lune, because it was her father's favorite. She'd played it at his funeral, her hands shaking so badly she'd barely made it through. She hadn't played it since. Are you sure about the Debussy? Henry asked one afternoon. That's a lot of emotion to carry in a performance. I need to play it, Lisa said simply. For him, for me. I need to finish what I started. Henry nodded, understanding in his eyes. Then make it beautiful. Week 5 brought a new kind of terror. Patricia posted the concert schedule online. Lisa saw her name listed among the performers. Lisa Rodriguez, piano, former student of Morrison Conservatory, performing classical favorites. It was real now. People would come. People would listen. People would judge. Her hand started shaking again. What if I freeze up there? She asked Jenny over lunch one day. What if I forget everything? Then you'll figure it out, Jenny said, stealing a fry from Lisa's plate. But you won't. You're going to be amazing. I'm bringing my mom, by the way, and my sister, and probably my Aunt Rita, who doesn't even like classical music but wants to support you anyway. Great. More pressure. Jenny laughed. That's what friends are for. The night before the concert, Lisa couldn't eat, couldn't sleep. She paced her tiny apartment, running through the pieces in her mind, her fingers twitching with imaginary notes. At midnight, she almost texted Patricia to cancel. At 1 in the morning, she almost called Henry to say she couldn't do it. At 2, she sat on her floor and cried. Not sad tears, not scared tears, just tears that needed to come out, releasing years of grief and fear and buried dreams all at once. When she was empty, she felt lighter somehow. Ready. The day of the concert was bright and clear. Lisa arrived at the Arts Center 3 hours early, her stomach doing backflips. The performance space was smaller than she'd imagined. Maybe 80 seats, a simple stage with a beautiful grand piano in the center. Nothing fancy, nothing terrifying, just her and the music. Patricia found her backstage, helped her set up her sheet music even though Lisa had most of it memorized. There's already people lining up outside, Patricia said. Good turnout for Saturday evening. Lisa peeked through the curtain. Her heart jumped. The seats were filling up fast. She spotted Jenny and her family in the 3rd row. Tony and Pete from Romano's were there, looking uncomfortable in button-up shirts. Other servers she worked with, regular customers she recognized, and there in the front row sat Henry. Next to him was an empty seat with a small bouquet of flowers on it. Who's that for? Lisa asked Patricia. Henry didn't say. He just asked if he could save the seat. Lisa understood. The empty seat was for her father. For the man who'd driven her to piano lessons every Saturday for 12 years, who'd sat through every recital, beaming with pride, who'd told her, even at the end, that music was her gift to the world. Her eyes stung, but she blinked the tears back. The lights dimmed. Patricia walked out to introduce her. Lisa heard her own name, but barely registered the words. Then Patricia was gesturing to the wings, and it was time. Lisa walked onto the stage on shaking legs. The applause felt too loud. The spotlight too bright. She sat at the piano bench, adjusted it slightly, and stared at the keys. This was it. Everything had led to this moment. She placed her hands on the keys and began to play. The Bach prelude came first. Safe, familiar, a warm-up. Her fingers found the notes easily, and by the second line her nerves started to settle. This was just practice. Just her and the piano. Everyone else faded away. The Chopin Nocturne was next. This time she played it with confidence she hadn't felt at Romano's. Every phrase meant something. Every note had purpose. She poured herself into it, letting the music tell her story. Loss, survival, hope. It was all there in the melody. When she finished, there was a long moment of silence before the applause. That silence meant they'd felt it too. The music had reached them. Now came the hard part. Lisa looked out at the audience, at Henry with his kind eyes, at the empty seat beside him, at Jenny, who was already crying, at all these people who'd shown up to support a waitress they barely knew. This last piece, she said, her voice surprising her by staying steady, is for my father. He loved Debussy. He loved music. And he taught me that dreams don't have expiration dates. They just wait for us to be brave enough to chase them again. She turned back to the piano, took a deep breath, and began to play Clair de Lune. Her fingers moved across the keys like water, gentle and sure. The opening notes floated through the air, soft and haunting. She remembered her father in his hospital bed, holding her hand, asking her to promise she'd play again someday. She'd lied and said of course she would, knowing even then she wasn't sure she could. But here she was, keeping that promise. The music swelled and dipped, carrying every emotion she'd buried for 3 years. Grief, love, gratitude, regret, joy. It all came pouring out through her fingers, through the piano, through the air itself. She played the final notes so softly they almost disappeared, held the last chord until the sound faded completely into silence. For a long moment no one moved. No one breathed. Then the audience rose to their feet. The applause was thunderous. People were crying. Henry was standing, clapping so hard his hands must have hurt. Jenny was a mess, makeup running down her face. Even Pete, the line cook, was wiping his eyes. Lisa stood and bowed, tears streaming down her own face. But they were good tears. Happy tears. Healing tears. She'd done it. She'd faced her fear and played her heart out. And the world hadn't ended. It had opened up instead. Backstage afterward, people lined up to talk to her. To thank her. To tell her how the music had moved them. Patricia hugged her tight and whispered, "You have a standing invitation to perform anytime you want."